Hi again out there, everyone. It's Todd Bates out here in Denver, Colorado. Today's business strategy session is on why this newsletter sucks. Now, if you've been watching my videos, listening to CDs and audios that I've done over the years, you know that I'm not a big fan of newsletters anyway. But if you're stuck in the mindset that you want to send out a newsletter, especially to your database or your referral base, so be it. But let's make the newsletter worthy of your time, energy, and money. If you're going to spend money on this stuff, which again is against my better judgment because over the last 20 years and 25,000 clients, I've had very, very low results, low success with any type of newsletter. And believe me, I've seen some really good newsletters come across my desk, but more often than not, they don't work. They're not worth your time and money. But if you want to do one, this webinar video is all about making your newsletter a little bit better. Now, let me give an example of a front of a newsletter that I recently saw. And then I'm going to ask you 4 questions or make 4 comments to you, just like I usually do when I'm analyzing any sort of marketing piece, whether it's website related or postcards or letters or ads or anything like that. First question I would ask you as you look at this newsletter, let me get to the question here. First of all, is your newsletter too complex? Because complexity equals no calls. When you look at the front of this newsletter, there's primarily the first thing that you see is a big graph. Now, the big graph in this particular case is of distressed properties, and it's great information, but when people look at this graph, I promise you, it's confusing. It's complex. People are trying to figure it out. Just like with any marketing piece, when somebody looks at it, they better be able to figure it out in about a half a second because that's about how long of a focused time frame you have to grab someone's attention. Otherwise, your newsletter is going to end up in the round file, so to speak. So complexity equals no calls. Make it simple. First rule of thumb when it comes to your newsletter. Second rule of thumb is I'm going to ask you, what is your number one goal this month? If you're sending out a newsletter like the one on your screen here, what is the number one message, number one offer, number one bit of information that you want to get across in your newsletter this month? Oftentimes when I see newsletters, the people creating the newsletters can't decide what they're really trying to get across. What point are they trying to make this month? And they end up putting, 52 links and 52 articles and 52 things in the newsletter, and no one knows what to respond to. So let's not do that. Make it about one key aspect, one key point, one key bit of information that you want to get across in this particular month. Third thing that I would tell you is I want you to start to speak normally to your prospect, to your client base, whoever you're sending the newsletter to. Here's what I run into quite a bit. I run into my clients thinking, feeling as though they are a professional writer. I mean, they're copywriters. They're professionals at writing. So they write and write and write and write. And it doesn't even sound like it's coming from them. I want you to be conversational in your tone. I want you to speak in your writing, if you're actually the one writing the newsletter, like it's coming out of your mouth, like you're sitting across the kitchen table from your prospect and you're letting them know. In this particular case, if you look at the headline, 2011, the year of the foreclosure. If that was your headline, your message for this particular month, what would you say to one of your prospects or clients, whoever you're sending this newsletter to, across the kitchen table from them? I mean, how would you talk to them? Would you be blunt? Would you get to the point? Would you give them statistics? I mean, how would you conversationally speak to them? Because that's how I want the tone of your newsletter. If you really want to get response from your newsletter, the best ones that I've ever seen, and again, I'm not a huge fan of newsletters, but the best ones that I've ever seen are always very conversational. They don't have the best English. They don't have the best grammar. It's not an English lesson or a text paper that you're going to get an A on here. You're just trying to get them interacting with you. The fourth thing that I would tell you about newsletters is, where is your call to action? And this gets also back to number 2 on my list here. What's the number one thing you want them to do? Where's your call to action? So when you look at this newsletter, where is their call to action? What do you want them to do? You want them to look at the graph and then call you? You want them to look at the graph, read the article, and then go visit your website? You want them to do what? You want to go download something? You want go listen to something? What do you want them to do? Remember, being educational always equals no phone calls. You're not an educator. You're not a professor writing some sort of thesis here. The whole point of sending out a newsletter is to get people to call you, to respond to you, so you get more referrals and more activity. Obviously, that's the whole point of any kind of marketing. So what is your call to action? What is your number one goal this month? Are you speaking to them normally? Or is the newsletter too complex and you have too many things going on? If you're gonna run newsletters, and again, I wouldn't suggest it, but if you're gonna do it, make sure you're following those key rules. Now, if you want some better ideas related to marketing, if you actually want to get some response, remember, a good newsletter will cost you $1 to $1.25 a piece to send out, with postage, creating, printing, all of that, the list. It's an expensive sort of marketing piece. If you want to get better bang for your buck, remember, we have a 7% marketing budget rule, and newsletters typically break that rule. But if you want to get a better bang for your buck, call me on my cell phone. My cell phone number is in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. It's 303-841-8008. 303-841-8008. I can guarantee you, just off the top of my head, no matter what product or service you're selling, I can come up with 15 different things to spend money on versus a newsletter. So hopefully you've gotten some good information out of this video, this webinar. Please keep in touch. Call me, 303-841-8008.